Saved by the bell. I bet you've all heard this saying before. Today, we're going to use the saying saved by the bell to express a person has just looked out of something. It's a really cool way to make your point across in a more clever and elegant way than just saying you lucked out. You know, these sayings and phrases that we use every day, sometimes they aren't what we just appear. And we don't really always understand where the root of these words come from. I know I don't contemplate the roots of our language, but today we're going to dive in and decode the saying, saved by the bell. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to explain the history behind the phrase from the 1800s, 1900s, and today, and demonstrate how culture has influenced the saying over time. When you think about using the saying saved by the bell, you might automatically think of the 1980s sitcom TV show Saved by the Bell. But the saying has actually been around for over 200 years. Saved by the Bell originally came from the use of safety coffins in the early 1800s. Safety coffins were specially designed coffins designed in England, which included a bell outside and a string into the coffin, where a individual who was revived or mistakenly pronounced dead would be able to ring the bell and be saved. Unfortunately, with the lack of technology and medical knowledge, there were a number of cases that show individuals that were buried alive. This became a huge fear for individuals, and it affected lots of our political and famous historical figures. Even George Washington had this fear and stated, "Have me decently buried, but do not let my body be put into a vault less than 2 days after I am dead." This way to ensure that he was actually dead. Lord Chesterfield in 1769 said, "All I desire for my own burial is to not be buried alive." This fear was identified in society as well and referenced in a number of literary works, including Edgar Allan Poe's The Premature Burial. This use of literary explanation showed how culture was able to address this growing concern in a different way, just how we see the majority of things through TV or videos that might be posted on Facebook. The fear of being buried alive was very real, and there are a number of documented individuals who were buried alive, including Virginia McDonald of New York, whose mother was convinced after the burial that her daughter was still alive. To reassure her family reopened the coffin and found that her body was on the side and had her hands badly bitten. At that point, her daughter had already passed away, but it showed every indication that there was a premature burial. And S.C. Dunbar of South Carolina's sister was unable to attend the funeral, but felt that the only way to have a proper goodbye was to see the actual body. Workers dug her up, and when the coffin was opened, Essie was alive and lived for another 47 years, which is just an example of how someone can actually survive being put in underground and how this was a real occurrence. There are other documentations of people being intentionally dug into the ground and buried alive, including Dr. Adolph Gunsmith, who was buried alive to prove the effectiveness of the safety coffin. He even ate dinner down there once. From there, the saying was transformed in the 1900s to a completely different meaning when the popularity of boxing increased. Boxers used the saying to indicate that the opponent was down for a round and that another boxer was saved from defeat by ringing the bell. Individuals started using the saying to express the close call, but then started relating it to their own lives and using it in their everyday language. Later, in the 1980s, the saying had a new meaning in a media sense as the popular teen sitcom Saved by the Bell was released. This TV show depicts the high school encounters of 6 friends at Bayside High and showed how Saved by the Bell could be used to identify the changing of a class or the end of a school day in order to miss that really tough question or skip out on a test. Over time, our society and culture have adapted the sayings that we use to become more relatable to the period. Looking at the roots of these words, we can see the evolution of the English language and the interest society has put on our language. I challenge you to look at the sayings that you use every day and find out where they come from. What's the story behind it? And make sure to watch out. and be saved by the bell.